Hello guys and welcome to my channel. Today in this video guys I am going to tell you guys how to install Raspberry Pi camera on your Raspberry Pi 4. In addition to this guys, I am also going to tell you guys how to upgrade the firmware on your Raspberry Pi 4 and also how to troubleshoot if your camera is not detected on your Raspberry Pi 4, or also if you get some errors like the command not found whenever you try to access your camera, or you have an error like the system appears to be configured for the legacy camera stack. I am going to tell you guys how to resolve all these kind of errors when you connect your Raspberry Pi 4 camera onto your Raspberry Pi 4. Also guys, I have already done the video on how to install the Raspberry Pi OS onto this Raspberry Pi 4. If you have not seen that video guys, I will put the link of the videos above or in the description below for you guys to check it out. So guys, ensure that you watch this video till the end so that you do not miss out on any important information or instructions that I have to share. Before we move further guys, if you are new to my channel and not yet subscribed to my channel, please hit that subscribe button and click that bell notification icon so that you get the notifications for all my new videos. Let's get started. So guys, before we can start with the installation of Raspberry Pi 4 camera, let us go through some of the physical specifications that it has. Whenever you purchase any Raspberry Pi camera, it will come in a similar configuration. It will have a camera module on the top and then there is a longer ribbon that is coming out. So camera module, here you have the camera. As of now it is protected with this tape. Whenever you start using the camera, you need to remove the tape so as to get your clear video. On the back side guys, you can see the module is connected with this ribbon cable that it comes with. The one side is already attached here, and the second side guys, you can see there is an exposed pin on the back side, and then the other side there is a blue ribbon. So this is how all your Raspberry Pi camera will look like. This is Raspberry Pi camera version 1.3. there are newer version of camera as of now available in the market, and there are different types of camera module that you can attach to Raspberry Pi 4. All of them will have a similar configuration. So I'm going to tell you guys how to install this Raspberry Pi camera onto this Raspberry Pi 4, but the process of different type of camera to be installed on Raspberry Pi 4 is going to be the same. Now let us go through some of the technical specification of this Raspberry Pi camera. This Raspberry Pi camera is a universal module that can be attached to Raspberry Pi 3, Raspberry Pi 4, Mini Raspberry Pi, Raspberry Pi Zero. This camera uses an Omni Vision OV5647 QSXGA 5 megapixel CMOS color sensor with a maximum resolution of 2592 to 1944 pixels, which provides a clearer image. This can be used as a web camera module as well. It works as 90 fps video in VGA mode and 30 frames per second at 1080p video when using the audio video codec of H.264. So this is a 1080p Full HD camera and it supports both VGA mode and a video mode. This is a CMOS color sensor guys. Now let us see how to install this Raspberry Pi camera onto your Raspberry Pi module. Before we can install guys, let us see at the port where we can install. On your Raspberry Pi 4 you have two ports. One is for display, one is for camera, which is clearly demarked on your Raspberry Pi 4 motherboard as well. Here it clearly says that this front port is for the display, and here you can see this port is for camera. It is also marked on the Raspberry Pi 4 motherboard. On the port guys, you can see there is a white part and there is a black part. Black part is a bar that you need to lift to unlock this port so that you can install the Raspberry Pi 4 camera. On the sides you have little notches. You can use your nail or the finger to lift it up from both sides. Ensure that the both side is lifted up to unlock this port. As you can see, the port is now lifted up. This port is ready to take the Raspberry Pi 4 camera module. Before we can insert this Raspberry Pi 4 camera module, here on the ribbon you can see there is the exposed port side or the pin sides, and there is a blue ribbon side. So blue ribbon side should be facing the black part and the exposed pin side should be facing the white part on your port. Now gently push this ribbon inside this port. Be gentle guys so as to not to damage your port. It will gently slide into this port whenever you unlock the port, and then you can see guys on the back side guys, my black bar is exposed. To lock this camera onto the place, all you need to do is gently press this black part onto the sides so as to lock your Raspberry Pi 4 camera onto this Raspberry Pi 4 motherboard. To ensure that your Raspberry Pi 4 module is properly connected, you can gently lift it, the camera ribbon will not come out. This ensure that your Raspberry Pi 4 camera is properly installed onto your motherboard. If you want to detach or change this Raspberry Pi 4 camera guys, you need to follow the same procedure. You have to lift the black bar from the back and then gently slide out this ribbon so as to remove or change this Raspberry Pi 4 camera. So this is how you install the Raspberry Pi camera hardware onto your Raspberry Pi motherboard. Now let us go onto the computer and do the configuration so as to detect your camera and capture some images. So guys, as you can see, my Raspberry Pi is now booted up and ready to install the Raspberry Pi camera. So first thing, I'm going to tell you guys on how to upgrade the firmware on Raspberry Pi 4. This firmware is nothing more than the BIOS on the Raspberry Pi. I'm going to tell you guys how to update the BIOS on your Raspberry Pi 4. You need to go to the terminal first and type the command sudo rpi-update. It will give you some warning guys, but you can ignore the warning and continue. As you can see guys, this is the self update. I have already updated the firmware guys. If you have not updated the firmware guys, it will start updating the firmware onto your Raspberry Pi and it will install. It will give you some warning guys, you can ignore and continue. So this is how you update the firmware or BIOS on your Raspberry Pi 4. So ensure that guys, you follow the instruction as in the sequence that I am saying guys, so as to upgrade the firmware and have the latest version of the BIOS. After you update the BIOS guys, you need to do a reboot. After the reboot guys, I am here back on the home screen. Next thing that I am going to do is to enable the camera module. To do that, you have to type the command sudo raspi-config. Press enter. It will take you to the console like this. You have to go on to the third option which says interface options. Inside the interface option, you can see the first option is for the legacy camera enable disable. You have to select that option and press enter. It will ask for the confirmation. Would you like to enable the legacy camera support? I will click on yes, and then legacy support is now enabled. Click OK and then go on to the bottom, click on finish. After you finish guys, this is how you enable the Raspberry Pi camera onto your Raspberry Pi module in the software or the firmware. Now let's reboot again. So guys, as you can see, it is rebooted again. Now I will enable all the interfaces from the menu. To do that, you have to go into the Raspberry Pi start menu and then preference, and from preference you need to go to Raspberry Pi configurations. Here guys, under the options of interfaces, ensure that all these interfaces are enabled. I have already enabled this interfaces guys while testing, so ensure that all these interfaces are enabled. All the interfaces might not be required guys, but I enable it by default so as to ensure that I can use all these interfaces as and when I require. So ensure that guys, all these interfaces are enabled and then click OK. Then again you need to go into the Raspberry Pi command prompt. So here guys, now let's test if my Raspberry Pi camera commands are working. So the first command that I'm going to type is the old command, which is already depreciated or no longer used. The normal command that we are using to capture the images in the old operating system was rasp-still or raspi-vid. So let's try both the commands and see if it is working. So rasp-still, press enter. You can see it says the command not found. Like I told you guys, these are old commands which are not going to work. So I will try for the video as well. Still is to capture the image and vid was to capture the video. So let's try again for the video part. SPIVID, press enter. you can see guys, these both commands are no longer used, so these commands will not work on your Raspberry Pi 4 newer operating system. So the new commands which are now being used are lib camera -jpg -still or -vid. So jpg will capture the jpg image, still will capture still images, and vid will capture the video, and another command called lib camera -raw, so as to capture the raw images from the sensor. So these are the new library which is available on Raspberry Pi to capture the images or access the camera and test. Let's try again. Lib camera -still. As you can see guys, now it is giving the error. The system appears to be configured for the legacy camera stack. So we need to modify the configuration of this Raspberry Pi 4 so as to be able to use this Raspberry Pi camera using this new library. So for that we need to type the command sudo su so as to go into the Raspberry Pi root prompt and then type the command sudo nano/boot/config.txt. Do not worry guys, I will put all these commands in the description below for you guys to check it out. So do not worry, just go in the flow that I am going with so as to enable the Raspberry Pi camera. Press enter here, it will go on to the command prompt editor mode, and then we will edit this file and save. You need to scroll down guys to the place where it says start_x is equal to 1. We need to comment this section and then enable the another section just below that, camera_auto_detect is equal to 1. If you do not have this command already typed into your config, just type it manually and it should work. Now I'm going to comment the first line using the hash, and then remove the hash from the second line, camera_auto_detect is equal to 1, and then scroll down below to the place where it says that GPU buffer is 128. You can see here the GPU memory is 128. Just increase the GPU memory from 128 to 256. Then you can save this file using Ctrl X, Y and enter. So this is how guys you modify the configuration of Raspberry Pi 4 so as to enable the lib camera command onto your Raspberry Pi. Now let's reboot again. So as you can see guys, it is rebooted again. Now let us go to the command prompt again so as to try. So let's try the basic test command, which is lib camera -hello. Let's start with sudo lib camera -hello and press enter. As you can see guys, it is already working. My camera is now detected and properly working. Now if you want to capture the image using the Raspberry Pi 4 camera, all you need to do is start with sudo lib camera -jpeg -o, then space test, the name of the file and the extension JPEG. Press enter. It will open the camera and capture the image. As you can see guys, my image is now captured. Now let us go to my home folder. As you can see guys, my test JPG is already here. Now let's click on this and open the JPG file. You can see my image is properly captured. So guys, this is how you connect the camera and capture the images onto your Raspberry Pi 4. So guys, this concludes the tutorial on how to connect the Raspberry Pi 4 camera and upgrade the firmware onto your Raspberry Pi 4. I hope you guys like this video. If you guys like this video, please do not forget to hit that like button. If you have any questions or comment, please leave them in the comment section below. I will try and answer as soon as possible. If you are new to my channel and not yet subscribed to my channel, please hit that subscribe button and click that bell notification icon so that you get the notifications for all my new videos. Thank you guys. Thanks for watching and clear skies.